You've been performing for so long, you forgot who you were before the applause. You don't need a new identity. You need to come home to the one you abandoned. It's time to change the narrative. It's time to recognize who you are. You are not an imposter. You are not a mistake. You are not a placeholder in your own life. It's time to change the narrative. Today's episode is about truth. The kind of truth that doesn't whisper, doesn't negotiate, and doesn't wait for permission. The kind of truth that sits in your chest and refuses to leave you alone. The kind of truth that keeps tapping you on the shoulder saying, you know this isn't who you are. Because healing doesn't begin with confidence. Healing doesn't begin with clarity. Healing doesn't begin with courage. Healing begins with acknowledgement. Acknowledging what happened, acknowledging what shaped you, acknowledging what you've been carrying, and most importantly, acknowledging that you are not an imposter. You cannot heal what you refuse to acknowledge. And for too long, you've been trying to heal while pretending nothing is wrong. There is a moment in every person's life where they realize the story they've been living is not the story they were meant to live. A moment where the mask gets heavy. A moment where the pretending becomes exhausting. A moment where the performance stops feeling like protection and starts feeling like suffocation. That moment is the beginning of healing, but only if you acknowledge it. Most people don't. Most people push it down. Most people silence it. Most people say, I'm fine, even when their spirit is screaming for air. And that's how the imposter phenomenon survives. Through denial, through silence, through pretending, through the refusal to acknowledge the truth that's been following you for years. Let's get honest. You didn't wake up one day feeling like an imposter. You were trained into it. You were conditioned into it. You were shaped into it by environments that rewarded your performance and punished your authenticity. Someone taught you that your voice was too much. Someone taught you that your gifts were intimidating. Someone taught you that your instincts were unreliable. Someone taught you that your worth was conditional. Someone taught you that your truth was inconvenient, and you internalized it, you absorbed it, you carried it, you built an identity around it. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. You cannot heal from a lie you're still calling the truth. You cannot heal from imposter feelings while still believing you are the problem. You cannot heal from self-doubt while still pretending your confidence just needs work. You cannot heal from identity wounds while still protecting the people who caused them. You cannot heal from emotional abandonment while still abandoning yourself. Healing requires acknowledgement, and acknowledgement requires honesty, and honesty requires courage. Acknowledgement is not blame. Acknowledgement is not victimhood. Acknowledgement is not weakness. Acknowledgement is not dwelling on the past. Acknowledgement is clarity. Acknowledgement is truth. Acknowledgement is ownership. Acknowledgement is the moment you stop gaslighting yourself, because that's what you've been doing. Gaslighting yourself, telling yourself you're overreacting, telling yourself you're imagining things, telling yourself you're not good enough, telling yourself you're not ready, telling yourself you're not capable, telling yourself you're the problem, but you're not the problem. You're the product of environments that didn't know what to do with your potential. And here's the part that's hard to admit. You've been trying to heal while still protecting the narrative that broke you. You've been trying to grow while still holding on to identities that were never yours. You've been trying to evolve while still carrying beliefs that were handed to you, not chosen by you. You've been trying to step into your becoming while still living under the shadow of someone else's expectations. You cannot heal what you refuse to acknowledge. So let's acknowledge it. Acknowledge that you learned to shrink because shrinking kept you safe. Acknowledge that you learned to perform because performing earned you approval. Acknowledge that you learned to doubt yourself because someone else doubted you first. Acknowledge that you learned to silence yourself because your truth made someone uncomfortable. Acknowledge that you learned to overachieve because achievement was the only place you felt secure. And then acknowledge this: you are not an imposter. You never were. You were conditioned to believe you were. The imposter phenomenon is not a reflection of your ability, it's a reflection of your history. It's not a reflection of your competence. It's a reflection of your conditioning. It's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of your wounds. And wounds don't heal through pretending. Wounds heal through acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is the moment you stop running from your truth. Acknowledgement is the moment you stop minimizing your experiences. Acknowledgement is the moment you stop apologizing for your feelings. Acknowledgement is the moment you stop dismissing your intuition. Acknowledgement is the moment you stop negotiating your worth. Acknowledgement is the moment you say, this happened, this shaped me, this affected me, and now I'm ready to heal. Healing begins where pretending ends. You cannot heal while pretending you're fine. You cannot heal while pretending you're confident. You cannot heal while pretending you're unbothered. You cannot heal while pretending you're unaffected. You cannot heal while pretending you don't need help. Pretending is the enemy of healing, and acknowledgement is the antidote. Now let's go deeper, because acknowledgement doesn't just reveal the wound, it reveals the pattern. When you finally acknowledge the truth, you start to see how many decisions you've made from a place of fear instead of identity. You start to see how many opportunities you've turned down because you didn't feel ready. You start to see how many relationships you tolerated because you didn't believe you deserved better. You start to see how many times you've played small because you didn't trust your own voice. Acknowledgement exposes the pattern so you can finally break it. Acknowledgement also reveals the places where you've been overfunctioning, the places where you've been carrying more than your share, the places where you've been proving instead of being, the places where you've been performing instead of living. When you acknowledge the truth, you begin to understand that your exhaustion isn't a personality trait. It's a symptom of carrying identities that were never yours to hold. And acknowledgement forces you to confront the gap between who you are and who you've been pretending to be. That gap is where the healing happens. That gap is where the becoming begins. That gap is where you finally stop trying to earn worthiness and start living from it. When you acknowledge the truth, you stop trying to fix yourself and start trying to free yourself. Acknowledgement also brings you face to face with the grief you've been avoiding, the grief of lost time, the grief of lost opportunities, the grief of the version of you that never got to exist because you were too busy surviving. Healing requires grieving the years you spent doubting yourself. It requires grieving the dreams you delayed. It requires grieving the confidence you never got to experience. But grief is not a setback. Grief is a doorway. And acknowledgement helps you reclaim the parts of you that were buried under fear. The boldness you silenced, the intuition you ignored, the creativity you dismissed, the confidence you abandoned. When you acknowledge the truth, those parts of you begin to rise again. They begin to breathe again. They begin to return home to you. Acknowledgement also helps you see that the imposter phenomenon was never about incompetence. It was about identity. It was about the disconnect between who you are and who you were taught to be. When you acknowledge that disconnect, you stop trying to fix your confidence and start trying to reclaim your identity. You stop trying to improve yourself and start trying to remember yourself. And acknowledgement gives you permission to choose differently, to choose environments that affirm you, to choose relationships that see you, to choose opportunities that stretch you, to choose boundaries that protect you, to choose a life that reflects who you really are. Healing is not just about understanding the past. It's about choosing a different future. When you acknowledge that you are not an imposter, you reclaim your identity. When you acknowledge your wounds, you reclaim your power. When you acknowledge your conditioning, you reclaim your clarity. When you acknowledge your story, you reclaim your voice. When you acknowledge your truth, you reclaim your becoming. Acknowledgement is the doorway. Healing is the process. Becoming is the outcome. But you cannot skip the doorway. You cannot bypass the truth. You cannot outrun the story. You cannot heal what you refuse to acknowledge. And here's the final truth. Your healing doesn't begin when you feel ready. Your healing begins when you feel honest. Your healing begins when you stop performing. Your healing begins when you stop pretending. Your healing begins when you stop calling yourself an imposter. Your healing begins when you acknowledge who you really are and who you've always been beneath the fear, beneath the conditioning, beneath the doubt, beneath the narrative that never belonged to you. You cannot heal what you refuse to acknowledge, and today you acknowledge it. You acknowledge the truth. You acknowledge the wound. You acknowledge the conditioning. You acknowledge the story. You acknowledge the power you've been giving away. And you acknowledge the identity that's been waiting for you to come home. This is where the healing begins. This is where the pretending ends. This is where the becoming starts. So take a breath, settle in, and let's begin the work of separating who you are from who you've been performing to be, because it's time to stop performing and start belonging. Welcome to the work. Welcome to the becoming. Welcome to Unmasking the Imposter. Thank you for listening to the Impostor Phenomenon Podcast. If today's episode opened something in you, share it with someone who needs this conversation too. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And if you're ready to go deeper, get ready to join our community where we're doing the real work of reclaiming identity, rewriting narratives, and rebuilding belonging from the inside out. Remember, you are not an imposter. You are not a mistake. You are the author, and your story is far from finished.